All right, today we're basically becoming historical detectives. We're on the hunt for what might just be the oldest secret in Christianity, the very first core message that started it all. And you know what? It's been hiding in plain sight for almost 2,000 years.
So here's the mystery we're diving into. Tucked away inside an ancient letter is this little snippet of text, what scholars call a creed. Think of it as the original elevator pitch for the Christian faith. The really big questions for us are, just how old is this thing? And maybe more importantly, why does its age completely change the game for how we understand Christianity's origins?
So, our investigation takes us straight to the Apostle Paul's first letter to the church in Corinth. Right there, in chapter 15, he lays out what he calls the message of first importance. This isn't just some side note. He's saying this is the main event. This is what we call the Proto-Gospel, the original, boiled-down essence of the Christian message.
Now listen really closely to how he words this. He says, "For what I received, I passed on to you." Right away, he's making it crystal clear that he's not the author here. He's a messenger, a link in a chain, delivering a very specific set of historical claims about Jesus. This right here is the absolute bedrock of the faith.
And look at how structured and simple this creed is. It's not complicated. It breaks down into 4 solid pillars. 1, Christ's death had a purpose. 2, he was buried, which is crucial because it proves the death was real. 3, he was raised. And 4, the proof, he appeared to actual witnesses. This 4-part formula is like the DNA of the Christian faith.
Okay, so that immediately raises a huge question, right? If Paul didn't invent this message, then who did? Where did he get it from? It's time for us to trace what you could call the chain of custody for this foundational belief.
Let's just zoom in on this phrase one more time because it's so important. Paul's language here, I received, I passed on, wasn't just casual chat. This was technical, rabbinic language. It meant he was carefully and faithfully transmitting a sacred tradition that he had been entrusted with. He's not brainstorming, he's delivering the goods.
So, this is where our investigation gets really pointed. We've got 2 massive questions. First, who were the original sources of this information? And even more critically, how soon after the actual events did this creed get formulated and then passed to Paul? That second question, the when, is absolutely everything.
And this is where it gets really exciting, because we can actually trace the timeline with a surprising amount of historical confidence. We can pretty much pinpoint when this creed was put together.
Okay, look at this. Historians generally place the death and resurrection of Jesus around AD 33. Now, what's just mind-blowing is that we can date with a high degree of certainty when Paul received this message. He got this already formulated creed somewhere between AD 34 and 36. That is an incredibly short window of time.
Let's just pause and let that number sink in. 2 to 3 years. That's it. That's the gap between the actual historical events and them being formalized into this core teaching. We're not talking about legends that grew over decades or generations. This was immediate.
So if Paul got this creed just a couple of years after the fact, the next obvious question is, who gave it to him? Well, the evidence points directly to the people you'd hope it would, the original first-hand witnesses. The most likely and historically supported scenario is that Paul got this creed directly from the leaders of the Jerusalem church, specifically Peter and James. And remember, these guys weren't just followers. They were the inner circle, the key figures who claimed to be eyewitnesses to the resurrected Jesus. The information came straight from the source.
Now, this is a really key distinction to make. Paul definitely had his own powerful personal conversion experience where the essence of the gospel, that Jesus is the risen Lord, was revealed to him. But the specific historical, factual details, the death, the burial, the timing, the list of who saw him, that information was given to him by the first-hand witnesses.
Okay, so we've established that this creed is incredibly old and comes straight from eyewitnesses. But so what? Why is that such a big deal? Let's break down exactly why this early date matters so much. It really boils down to 4 huge things. First, apostolic authority. This confirms the messages from the original eyewitnesses, not something invented decades later. Second, salvific efficacy. This was the actual message the very first Christians believed was the key to salvation. Third, historical grounding. The faith is built on claims you can actually investigate: death, burial, appearances, not just abstract philosophy. And finally, doctrinal clarity. This gives us a clear, non-negotiable core of Christian belief right from day one.
And all of this brings us to one final really powerful thought. When you have a creed like this, formulated within just 2 or 3 years of the events themselves, and you know it was transmitted by eyewitnesses, how does that stand up against the idea that the core beliefs of Christianity were just legends that developed over a long period of time? The historical evidence here presents a pretty powerful challenge to that theory, suggesting the message was clear, consistent, and there from the very, very beginning.